Hello citizens and welcome back. In today's video I want to talk about base building in Star Citizen. What is the end goal, how can we get there, and how expectations might have changed since the original concept. As always, if you like this video, sacrifice a like and a comment to the YouTube algorithm and subscribe for more. And here's a shout out to our amazing patrons for their support of the channel and the Armory. We don't have a lot of information when it comes to base building. We know that to do so we will need to have a land claim beacon to claim the area where we want to build. Then we also know that to build custom bases we will need to have the Pioneer on hand with plenty of supplies. This information was released along with the Pioneer concept and land claim beacons a few years ago. For those of you who don't know what the Pioneer is, it's a capital ship that is basically a mobile construction site that can build bases inside of itself. Now, this would be the final iteration of base construction, and you can probably tell that we are many years away from that. Also, this is quite an advanced version of construction gameplay, which brings me to the question of what are some smaller steps CIG could take first and maybe in the near future. Also, in the original Pioneer and base construction concept, CIG made it seem like that the outposts we will be able to build will be very similar to what the existing outposts look like, meaning prefabricated buildings that in theory can be moved around if needed. But I wonder if this will need to be reevaluated considering the new outpost style that is being developed for Pyro and for Stanton. After all, I imagine that many players will want to build more permanent outposts on planets rather than just collections of prefabs. And I wonder where this would fall in the construction gameplay or whether it will be even possible. But back to the first question. What should be the milestones for base construction and how to get it to the backers as soon as possible? Well, we're missing some key tech. First of all, resource management. While it mostly applies to ships, it will eventually be extended to bases and buildings. It seems like the first iteration of resource management will be coming in the near future, so let's consider this prerequisite complete. Next, we will need the mechanics behind the actual land claim beacons. Now, this is the real issue. We don't know how this is going to work, and I don't think CIG know either. On the other hand, I don't think it matters for now since the verse isn't anywhere near big enough to allow land claims to exist. So with that major blocker in mind, let's see what could be the tier 0 implementation of base construction. Actually, the old outposts and the Pioneer concept documents offer some ideas. A logical first step would be prefabricated buildings that can be deployed on the ground temporarily and moved when needed. This goes around the need to have a working land claim system. But it does introduce the problem of how does one obtain these buildings, how to move them around, and how long will they persist in a location. The first problem is easy. I would make these buildings rentable for a reasonable amount of credits. This achieves two things: makes entry-level buildings available to everyone and limits their availability and lifetime. Which brings us to the issue of persistence. Technically, persistent entity streaming should take care of this. The placed buildings persist for as long as the shard is active or for as long as the rental is not expired. And now for the final issue. How will you move them around? Well, we actually have a few ships that could in theory do this. Technically, the Argo cargo should have a tractor beam capable of doing this. Alternatively, the Argo should have droppable modules that could be replaced with smaller versions of deployable buildings. And then we of course have the Argo SRV, which could tow the buildings around as needed. And then in true CIG fashion, they could create a whole new ship created specifically for this task, or maybe a new variant of an existing ship. I could definitely imagine an Argo raft variant designed specifically to carry building modules. Okay, so now that we resolved the how, let's take a look at the what. What would be the temporary buildings that we can rent and use? Well, feel free to suggest your own ideas in the comments, but here are a few that I came up with. The first and easiest, a small portable manned turret. It would be especially interesting if it was small enough to load onto a Valkyrie and to be moved around with tractor beams. That way, drop troops could deploy some additional firepower that would provide protection against airborne threats. Or you could use it to protect other buildings. This has some issues, but could definitely be done. My second idea is essentially a small clinic, maybe 1 or 2 medical beds, a place for players to heal up and maybe respawn. This could be useful for cave mining or combat operations. There could be different tiers available for rent depending on what you need. There is also some potential for this breaking the balance, so there might need to be some drawbacks to this. Next, a similar idea but basically a small ship restocking area. Now, this is somewhat easier to balance because you can very easily limit the available resources such as fuel, ammunition, and RMC for repairs. This would add another level to support gameplay, especially if it would allow the restocking of ground vehicles. And my final idea is a bit more complicated. One of the big reasons players want to build bases is to process raw materials and for manufacturing. So I think it would be a good idea to have a small, towable refinery. Something that would still require human input to manage the refining process, load the saddlebags, and unload the refined materials. The problem I see here is that the Expanse and the Galaxy will probably be much better at providing the service, so having a building might not be as good. But I definitely see some groups taking advantage of this. Obviously, even this Tier 0 implementation is quite advanced, and I don't think we will see it anytime soon. But I believe that eventually base building will be a very important part of Star Citizen. And with that being said, that's it for tonight. What do you think? What should be the first implementation of construction? What portable structures would you like to see? Let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching, fly safe, and I will see you in the verse.